It's a great idea to foster and adopt children at age 40. I was 42. My wife was younger, probably about 36 when we started. And, ours were little kids. What advantages would older parents, if you consider 40 older, have in fostering and adopting?
Well, you have life experience, so you are, not going to let the system come in and push you around. You most likely will be smart enough and have, enough, gone through enough in life to stand up for what the child needs and stand up for, what you need. Also, you're financially, I'm sure, much more better off than you are in your 20s.
Right.
Stable with your job. You either have a house that you've rented for a while or a house that you, have bought and you own. Um, it's probably much easier, like with your background, for them to do your background check and, realize that, you're in a stable situation at that age as compared to your 20s. So I'm sure that would probably move along a lot faster. And you've had enough time to be around other children, either having your own, children and your own family and, watching your children grow and understanding how it is to deal with a child every single day in your home, or you've worked with other children, or your family and friends have other children, so you've experienced, what it is to have a child, to deal with a child. You understand the different things that you could have to deal with having a child. And that only comes with, experience and as you get older.
Yeah, and what do you think about health? Because as people get older, it's funny. My mom used to say, "Oh, things happen when you get to age 60." Now, if you adopt like we did, and you're 42, you're going to be 60 when your child hits 18. Are we doing them a disservice just because of age and things that can go wrong with health, or that could happen at any time? What do you have to say about like that
Well,
kind
I
of an
think
issue?
that could happen at any time. I mean, you could be 20 years old and your parents could have both died, and regardless of what age they were, and you could be left to live out your adult life without having your parents. I mean, it's the same situation. Like, just because you're older getting into it doesn't mean that you're going to be gone sooner or later than any other child going into adulthood would have to, deal with the same kind of situation. You could live until you're 85. You could see your, because most people are having, children younger these days. So you could, live a normal life being 60 something and have your children be young adults and have their own, have their own children, have grandchildren. You could live through that with no problem. I mean, age is really only a number. If it's something that you're interested in and you want that for your life, then it shouldn't really matter. I mean, you're going to do what you need to do to live the life that you want to live. So regardless of whether you get sick or you have a health issue or whatever, you're still going to adapt to that and move forward.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of, I definitely agree with that. And also, what do you think about that if you're older, like if you're 40 and maybe you've had one child, or maybe you've had no children, by that point you really want a child? Are you going to be more committed to do something like foster care, which isn't easy?
Well, if it were me and I wanted to have my own children before I decided to get into fostering, if fostering is, like in my situation, my grandmother fostered, so that's why I wanted to foster. So I knew since I was little that, that's what I wanted to do. So in that case, if I were able to have my own children, I would have wanted to have my own children before I fostered. Just for the fact of, you don't want your children to feel like, okay, I'm 2 or 3 or 4 years old or whatever, and I'm not understanding that these kids are just coming to my house and staying for a little bit and then they're leaving. Like as a child grows, they're not going to understand, like, you can't really explain to them like, oh, that's your brother or your sister, because you're fostering. They're not. They're, coming and going. I mean, it's going to be hard for a child as they grow up to understand the situation. So I would think, me personally, if you were having your own children, I would want to have my own children. I mean, obviously not have them be 18 or, whatever until you decide to foster. But I would say until they're at least like maybe 12, 13, 14, in that range, where you can sit down and have a conversation with them and say, look, this is something that, mommy and daddy have wanted to do for a while. We didn't think it was the right time because, we didn't want to take away from you being able to do what you wanted to do, and, like not understanding the situation. We feel you're old enough to understand now, and, kind of getting them on board with your idea and opening the door to like any questions that they have and that type of thing, so you're still able to move on and do what you want to do, which is fostering, and they're comfortable with it. They're not feeling like this person's coming in and taking over my family, or they're not understanding the revolving door. And you can you can in your mind, be comfortable with the fact that you're not inconveniencing your child in any way, bringing this into the situation, because they'll understand, where you're coming from at that point.
Since this is Sherry and Mike living the foster care life, we'll see you next time on the next episode. See you soon.